internal family systems therapy. Game changer for me, such a great tool to understand, learn, and have, because you can better understand yourself and those around you. Hello, boss. Today I'm going to be sharing and talking about something that I learned in therapy, which is called internal family systems therapy, aka IFS for short. This is a form of therapy that has helped me tremendously in my journey as a CSA survivor. And so I wanted to come on here and share with you guys how helpful this tool is to have and to understand and to use. It's going to probably change your life, especially if you can follow along and you are really in tune with your parts or like your inner child. You will like understand exactly what I'm talking about, and you can use it in your journey of healing and overcoming those inner child wounds. For some of you guys, it might not be that big of a deal because you just don't have a lot of inner child trauma, but I guarantee you that you could still use it in some kind of way, even if you don't have hardships with your inner child or things like that. Like, you can still understand how this tool is useful for yourself. I have been going to therapy for almost a year now. I started in the beginning of 2025. So it's been over 60 plus sessions that I've had with my therapist. And in those sessions, we have used IFS therapy almost all the times when I've had a situation come up with my CSA journey stuff, so that I could heal and overcome these hard feelings or hard situations that I had to go through. This is just my interpretation of what IFS therapy is. I will share some links in the description with actual professionals that, maybe they can have a better explanation on what each thing is, and maybe they're more clear about it because they're the experts. But this is just my interpretation of it, and maybe you don't understand them and you understand me. So I'm just going to share my interpretation of it and how I use it, some examples for you guys as well. So yeah, I will put those links in the description. So what is IFS therapy? Basically, it's a clinical study that identified humans can have many identities within themselves. They don't call it identities, of course, but that's just how I interpret it to understand it at first. They call it parts, aka protector parts and exile parts. And then there's the core self. These parts and the core self appear to the surface, causing us to behave or feel a certain way. I actually visualized it like the movie Inside Out. It's a Disney movie about these emotions and how they run the show and they navigate. And if you have not seen it, then go and search it up so that you can have a better understanding of what I'm referring to. But this movie was how I kind of saw what IFS therapy is, as if like it was a family of myself within myself, like many versions of myself within me. And I could talk to them and I could navigate them and I could bring them to the surface, or I could help to calm them down in a way. So I visualized it like the movie Inside Out, but instead of like the emotion characters, I visualized it as like joy is actually the core self, and then the other emotions are the parts. And we want the core self to steer our life, just like how we want joy, who is full of like happiness, to steer our system as well. So I'm going to go into what each one is, okay? So I'm going to start off with the protector parts. The protector parts is one of the parts because there's two of them. There's the exile and the protectors, okay? For the protector parts is actually broken down into two more. So they have the managers and the firefighters. But the job of the protector parts and what they do is, of course, they protect you from experiencing those deep wounds. They stop you from experiencing those exile parts. It's not like they actually stop you, but they protect you. They want to make sure that your system is okay and that it's ready to face this when it is ready to face this, and so that it doesn't crash your whole system. So in these protector parts, the managers obviously manage, and then there's people pleasing and controlling. That's what the managers in the protector part do. And then the firefighters, what do? Well, they are reactive. They are the ones that basically react and act out and lash out, and they are just, you know. So a small example of your protector parts being present is when you see somebody who says like, I don't care, or you see somebody where their walls are up because ego is stopping them from experiencing more pain in the future because they're scared of that. These are protector parts protecting them from feeling those deep wounds, which is like the fear of feeling abandoned again, the fear of losing care. Like, what if I meet another person, they don't care for me? So I should just not care first, and I should just go about my day and not allow them access to that piece of myself. Those are your protector parts being present. Then there is the exile part, which is the other part of the parts. Those are the wounds that you don't want to feel or has been pushed through the back because maybe there's nothing you could do about it and you just feel like, oh, it is what it is, or oh, I don't want to feel it because it hurts and I don't want to stress because I have to keep going. These exile parts are really deep and are really far, and they are things that you probably just had to keep going through, and so it's sitting in the back of like yourself in your brain, and you don't experience it until something triggers it. All of a sudden, you feel some type of way. Oftentimes, inner child is used as a metaphor to represent this part of a person that holds on to past experiences, emotions, and unmet needs from childhood. I believe I got this one off of the internet because it can kind of get confusing. Let's use this for example. Someone says, parents are always the best. And to you, maybe you didn't have the best parents growing up. And so for them to generalize like all parents are good, you might feel some type of way. And let's say that you react to it and you get defensive, or you just ignore that pain, but you go home and you feel some type of way. Like, those are your exile parts and they are hurting. And so that's why you feel the way you do. It's because your inner child felt some type of way because you didn't have the best childhood. Trust me, your adult self can handle the world already. But what can't handle the world is that inner child in you. That inner child that had to, let's say you didn't have the best parents, okay? That inner child that had to survive, had to do things, had to learn things from themselves, had to maybe start working early. That inner child or that teenage child as well, they feel some type of way with somebody generalizing that all parents are good because you didn't have the best parents. So for you, that's your exile part. That's your deep wounds that you feel. And that's very valid for you to feel that way because you have a different experience from this person. The last thing is the core self. And I love the core self because I just love all things positive. Like, ever since I started working on my healing journey, positivity was the start of my healing journey. And so just the core self, since the core self is your higher self, positive, like everything good, I love the core self, and I hope that I wish that I could have my core self be present all the time, but that's just not life. Like, we have past traumas and experiences that has shaped us, and we got to go through them sometimes. Anyways, the core self is basically your higher self. This part of yourself is like joy. It consists of all things good, basically, and they break it down into the 8 C's, which is calmness, curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. When you are aligned with your core self, when your core self is present and it is driving you as a person, you display all these 8 C's. An example of this being present is just you just feel so on top of the world. You're so kind and giving. Even the person who cut you off in traffic, like, it doesn't bother you, and you can even empathize with them. You have that like compassion for them. And then you're just so creative where you're like doing artwork, or you are just podcasting. You're just on top of the world and nothing phases you. This is you knowing that your core self is present. In IFS therapy, they like to use a term called blended and unblending, okay? Blended is when your core self is blended with your parts, that protective parts and the exile parts. It's when your parts are really navigating your system and your core self is not really there. You're not really creative, you're not really compassionate, you're just kind of feeling dead inside and not motivated. And not just that, but you are just not the most loving human. Like, I have been there where I didn't have that many friends, and that really defined and showed me that I wasn't really a good human to be around because people didn't enjoy my company. And so that you can see that my core self was not really present. That's why nobody really wanted to be around me, because my parts were blended. Unblending is when you sit with these parts and you tend to them and you undo part from your core self. Everybody has a core self and everybody has parts, but some people have stronger parts because some people just have stronger wounds or they just haven't tend to it, so it's just more present. I have a few keynotes for you because when I started learning IFS therapy, there was a lot of things that I kind of got mixed up or I just didn't really understand with these parts and this core self. One of the keynote is that there is no bad parts, okay, boss? There is no bad parts. Even your protector, most high up protector part, even your deep wounds that you have locked in away for so long and now they're appearing and your firefighters are just everywhere. Even those parts, like, they are not bad. They are actually protecting you, your system, from experiencing that deep shame, that deep pain that it's not ready to feel. And so there are no bad parts, and you are not a bad person for having these parts that are more apparent or stronger. When I was going through some of my sessions with my parts, because I was frustrated or angry or I just didn't feel the most kind-hearted person, I started to feel like I wasn't healing or I wasn't the best person. It doesn't mean that you are a bad person if you feel angry or you're negative right now. You're not a bad person and there are no bad parts. The second keynote that I want you to remember is you are not crazy if you have very visible parts and you're very in tuned with your parts. Like when I first started learning about IFS therapy, I thought that something was wrong with me because as my therapist was having me talk to like my inner child or this younger version of myself or this teenage version of myself, I was like, yeah, I can see that she's sad and um, I think my inner child is angry right now. And I started to think that I was going crazy. Why? Because I confused it with this other thing, which is called dissociative identity disorder. DID for short. I don't know if they call it DID for short. I don't know, but I'm going to say DID. So this dissociated identity disorder is like more common, I feel like, because I have seen this more than IFS therapy. DID, I've seen it in like Criminal Minds where this kind of condition is where somebody changes their whole identity to like somebody else. Like for example, let's say I have DID, okay? I change into this like male version of myself where I like to paint and that's all I am and I can snap into this other person of myself. No, this is not IFS therapy is not DID because what makes it different is IFS therapy, you are still attached. Like you can still connect and there's a relationship. You have control and awareness, okay? That thing that makes it very different from DID is in DID, there is a really strong detachment. That's all I have for you, a strong detachment. I don't want to go into DID because that's a whole thing that I did not like really dig into or learn, but I just know that it's different from IFS because when you start to realize and sit with your parts and your inner child and that teenage version of yourself, you start to think like, am I going crazy? But you're not, boss. You're not going crazy, especially if you do it quite often because especially for people who are like me, who has childhood trauma, I feel like it's a constant thing where we feel some type of way or something happens and we're like, oh yeah, this teenage version of myself feels really angry because they didn't get XYZ or because this incident happened. You are not crazy if you have a lot of these appearing in your day-to-day life, okay? You are not crazy, especially if you can still hold relationships and you still have attachment and all that. You're not crazy and you do not have DID. Of course, I can't diagnose you, but I just want you to know that there's a huge difference between the two. I'm going to give you some examples, some actual examples of how I use IFS therapy in some of the situations that I've been in. Because the only way for you to understand how it works and what I'm talking about is for you to see how I use it. And I will be using IFS therapy and talking about my parts and my inner child and stuff a lot more in the future when I talk about my journey as a CSA survivor, because that's just how I heal. That is exactly how I heal and the professional way that I've learned how to heal through this. And like I said, IFS therapy is the number one tool that I needed all my life to help me navigate these things that occur in my life and how to just really be with that core self a lot more. So I'm going to give you some examples. The first example I'm going to give you is an example with my inner child. So an exile part that was appearing in my life. So there was a time where I came out about who my perpetrator was, and it didn't feel like people were seeing the pain and the struggles that I've gone through. And I couldn't figure out why I was so frustrated, why I was angry. But of course, I came to the realization that my inner child was screaming. She was screaming because she felt like the world and people and just whoever was not acknowledging the pain and the struggles that she's had to go through with this person, which is my perpetrator brother, of course. I just couldn't be the best version of myself, be with my core self. Why wasn't my core self present? I sat with my inner child because I realized it was my inner child screaming, and it was like, what does my inner child want? What can I do to help her feel more calm, to help her feel seen? Because that's what she was screaming about. Is like, nobody sees me, nobody cares for me, nobody is validating me. So what can I do as an adult version with my core self? Okay, I'm not going to let my emotions drive me. I'm not going to let that inner child drive me to do something that I'm going to regret later, or that I don't feel like actually aligns with my core self. And that was actually to validate her pain publicly in a post. It wasn't now in a video form, because that's what it was when I came out, but it needed to be a post to reassure or confirm that this is what happened. And so even if you didn't watch that video, this is the pain of her. And whether people acknowledged or not, making that post in my core self was already relieving that pain that my inner child was feeling, because she just wanted it to be more visible out there. So that's what I did. That's what I did to tend to that piece of myself. And I wanted to make sure, I want to double reconfirm this. I wanted to make sure that I would execute what my inner child needed in my core self. When I made that post, I was not bashing my perpetrator. I talked about specific things like why it was horrible, the horrible things that he did to me, and that why it's important, things like that. I did not focus on like, this is tea. I focused on this is the problem. Okay, so that was how I executed and how I healed that exile piece of myself. Now, example with my protector part being present. When I started to experience the odd signs from my father a few months after he made his choice to stand by my perpetrator, I didn't want to admit to myself that this was the reality of his choice and mine. I didn't want to feel the wounds of the truth, so I pushed through events that I had to attend, or I'd sleep all the time and not be productive at all. At first, I did accept, like, okay, I know that my dad has made his choice, but it was also my protective part being present for me to just be like, yeah, it is what it is. But I was still sad. I was still sad, and I was protecting myself from feeling those deep wounds, which is him failing me again and abandoning me again. So what did I do to unblend this part? I sat with the little girl in me that was so sad and was feeling so abandoned again. The way that I talked to her was like, I know you're sad, but I'm here for you, and we can do this world without him. He doesn't want to support you, choose you, acknowledge you, and I'm here. So I didn't ignore it anymore, where I invalidated it or where I said, it's fine, life goes on, because the pain is actually really real. And that is the truth of what happened. And so when I said those things and I validated her and I sat with her through that pain and I admitted these things to myself, it really hurt. And I even showed an episode of this pain that I was going through because I wanted you, boss, to see what it's like when your inner child is screaming, or when your exile part, when you're living in that part, what it looks like. And it does look very, very upsetting, but it is something that you have to do in order to become a better version of yourself and to go back to your core self, to unblend that part and your core self. So that is what I did to unblend this piece of my journey. The last thing is I want to do like a more broader scenario or example for you, because I know that mine is very specific to me, but I want you to understand how it can also work for you in general in your everyday life as well. So let's just say maybe for you, you have like a disconnect with your family, okay? Family trauma, or growing up, you just have things that weren't the best with your family. Let's say that your partner or even your friends' family, when you see that they're all like happy, or all the joy and laughter, and you might feel sadness or even anger when you see all of that. And it's not entirely you that, as an adult, like you, why would you care about this? It's actually your exile, or maybe that inner child, because you've experienced this growing up. It's those exiles that are bringing this to the surface. And that is the part that actually yearns for safety and connectedness and love from your own blood. Like you seeing it trigger something, it's because there's a wound there. And hopefully you don't have your protector part, or maybe you might even have your protector part where it's like, nah, I don't care, or I don't want to go to this event because it's just lame. But really, it's because you don't want to see that. You don't want to witness that. You don't want to feel that pain of what it's like to not have family that's so close, that's so happy. And I've been there because I've had this when I lost my family. I was feeling all of that. I had many parts that were present as well. So how do you overcome this, boss? How do you overcome when something like this happens, when your part is blended with your core self and you feel some type of way about seeing this family, or seeing this person, or seeing joy or happiness in other families, us using this as an example. Whether it's anger or sadness, understand it. Talk to your inner child or to yourself and say something like, I'm sorry that you feel sad, you can't enjoy Christmas with your own immediate family. I acknowledge you and I'm here for you. What is it that I can do to help lessen this sadness from you, or fill in this void? Because you can talk to it, and maybe that's not enough. Maybe you need to find a solution. And so finding a solution is asking yourself what you could do, what your adult version could do to help tend to this piece of yourself that is feeling this type of way. And it could be solutions like talking to someone else about your feelings, just letting that off of your chest. Sometimes that's enough. Or it can be a further step where, let's say, you create your own gathering of very close friends that you just feel like are family to you. And having that makes you feel complete already, makes you feel like you have a family. And so then it helps heal that piece of yourself that doesn't actually have your immediate family. This can also help you. Of course, we all know that it's not anything compared to the actual thing, but it's a lot better than not having anything at all and just being angry the whole time. All right, boss, that is all I have to share with you guys about internal family systems therapy. Again, it's such a great tool to understand, learn, and have, because you can better understand yourself and those around you. I hope that it was helpful for you like it is for me. It was a life game changer for me. So it is everything, and I will be referring to a lot of these terms as I continue to talk about my journey as a CSA survivor. Since as a CSA survivor, there's a lot of childhood trauma there, and as an adult now, I'm tending to a lot of those exile parts of myself. So I will be referring and using a lot of vocabulary from IFS Therapy, so that I'm not just telling you something, I'm telling you the solutions and how I overcame these things to hopefully help you overcome your things as well. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week, and as always, stay being the bad boss that you are. Bye!